How do leaders motivate their people? This is a question that continues to fascinate me. As you know, we did a video on this some time ago in which I shared with you Vroom's expectancy theory, and I think that's robust. It has a lot to say, but it's not the only word on leadership and motivation. Self-determination theory also has a great contribution to add to our thinking and our discussion so that if we're a leader, we can more effectively motivate. And if we coach leaders, we can help them be better motivators of their folks. Let's get started and talk about leadership and motivation. Let's talk motivation theory. Before you go with me much further on this ride, though, let me admit that this is going to be for folks who, like me, tend to geek out on good theory. It may feel a little bit like inside baseball to some other folks, but this is hugely practical for day-to-day leadership. Leadership, by definition, involves getting others to find their energy to help you get the job done. If you don't understand what motivates others, you're screwed. At the least, you will, as that modern prophet Bob Seger sang, be running against the wind. So let me give you a little bit of context first. 15 years ago, I was fairly new in this field and came across this model for managing performance issues. When someone wasn't meeting my expectations, it was a question of skill. They had it or they didn't have it. The other factor was will, and again, they had it or they didn't. And this gave us a nice, neat little four-square grid, right? 4 possible options with people who are deficient in both factors, who have will but not the ability, who don't have the will, but they can get the job done, and then people who have both. Now, it's simple, it's logical, it leads to a few pretty obvious approaches. What do you do for someone who can't do or won't do? Well, frankly, I used to tell people, don't waste your time here, move them on. That was just a bad hire. What do you do for people who can't do it but want to? Well, you train them. What do you do for people who can do but won't do? Well, you got to hold them accountable, right? And then finally, for people who can do and will do, hey, encourage them, support them, get out of their way. And again, there's a simple logic here. In some ways, it's attractive. Skill and will are factors in human performance and whether the job gets done right. The problem is just that this model is too simplistic. There's more going on in human performance than what this shows us. Even if in the broadest sense all performance is a matter of can do or want to, it still doesn't tell you what you need to know. That is, what's contributing to the lack of knowledge or motivation. We may exhibit a lack of can do because we don't have the right tools. But this model would have us do training. A lack of want to, on the other hand, may stem from a poor relationship with my boss, but this model would call for closer measurement and feedback, not necessarily bad things, but not solutions to the underlying issues. So while the model may be true at some level, it doesn't illuminate what's going on well enough to help us find our way forward with confidence. Moreover, at another level, this model is false, at least in what it implies. If you've been with me for a while, you know I truly believe that people want to do good work. This model isn't consistent with that. I know you can think of times probably in your own past, just like I can, when I didn't do my best work. But the reason wasn't because I stopped wanting to do good work. It was something having to do with the environment. It couldn't be boiled down to a lack of will. If that's true for you, that's probably also true for your employees. Not excusing performance issues, that's not the point. We just need to understand them more. We need more than what this can provide for us. So, what are some of those underlying factors involved in human motivation? Let's go there now. So For those of you who are interested and want to read up on it some more, this is based on a working knowledge of self-determination theory, which has been in the literature and progressively researched, I think, since like the late 1980s. It's pretty good stuff. Think about the times in your past when you really loved what you were doing. What you were experiencing in that moment is called primary motivation. It's enjoyment in the task itself. It's when work is no longer work. No one has to tell you to do it or hold you accountable for it. It's something you do, almost anyways, whether or not you are being paid. In those moments when you're lost in the task, you are experiencing some combination of three different feelings, sensations. The first is a sense of competence. You know that you're good at this stuff and that it makes a difference. Second is autonomy. That is, you know that you have some say in what you do and or how you go about doing it. The third is relatedness. In whatever way is appropriate for the task at hand, you are connecting effectively with others to get it done. You're not actually thinking about it, though. Usually you're just experiencing it, and it feels good. Think again about when you were most motivated. Aren't these, some version of these three factors, somehow involved in making that work or activity fun? It is for me. Now, the other forms of motivation, these are the primary forms, these three, right? But the other forms are known as secondary motivators, and that's working for any reasons other than competency or competence, autonomy, or relatedness. Within secondary motivation, there's a range of specific motivators one can point to, from those that are more potent and effective on the left end of this arrow to more that those that are less effective on the right. Generally, those motivators to the left-hand side, they feel more important. They're usually chosen. So in some sense, there's some autonomy that's wrapped up in it. Now, at any given moment, of course, a secondary motivator can feel primary. Say you're working late for something that's due tomorrow, or you're doing extra calls to get that sales bonus. But the motivating power of secondary motivation tends to fade over time. Not so with primary motivation. We all want the juice we get from being good at something that makes a difference, having a sense of power and choice, and connecting with others. It's like a really good drug that has only positive outcomes. So let's kind of do a little grouping here. You see this box that I just drew around. What do all of those motivators in the big box have in common? That's competence, autonomy, relatedness, beliefs, values, personal goals. Well, yes, you're right. I see that hint in the back. All of those are internal. All of these produce more energy for sustained work than the two in the smaller box, reward and punishment. Now, let's compare this to our actual leadership practice. When we want to motivate somebody, where do we focus? Which tool do we pull out of our toolkit? And if you're like most, you grab those two down at the bottom right. Is something out of whack here? So these are the least effective motivators, but they're often the only ones that get used. Now, they have a place in the toolkit, not taking that away. But if that's all you're using, is it any wonder people aren't jumping up and down when you say, hey, let's tackle this next big project? So the other part about this, just before we leave this, is that if these are the only ones you rely on, they're going to get you in trouble. What happens, for example, when you reward someone with a pay increase, right? We're going to give them more money. It becomes the new normal. And now all of a sudden that motivating power is lost. And what about punishment, right? Can I get you to hurry up by threatening you with your job? Of course I can, but what happens when I turn my back? You go back to normal. And now we just have resentment involved as well. And so punishment, that's the least effective tool. It teaches the employee not to get caught is what it actually does. Now, by only using these two external motivators and ignoring the others, we're actually training folks who will work for us to be the kind of guys who leave and walk over to our competitor for an extra $1 an hour. If all I get from a job is a paycheck, then I'll always be looking for the highest bidder and the cushiest job. So, with a little bit better understanding of what's involved in motivation, what does this mean we do differently as leaders? Here's suggestion number 1. It's worth noting in passing that we need to put people in the jobs for which they are a good fit. We can tap into some of the more powerful secondary motivators by sitting down with our people and guiding discussions about how the work connects to their personal values and goals. Make this part of your goal-setting session at the beginning of the year and reinforce or go deeper during performance reviews. Now, to access the primary motivators, self-determination theory would point us toward fostering our employees' experience of the 3 factors we've discussed. Strengthen their felt sense of competence, the belief that they do good work. How do you do that? Well, ensure that they're a good fit, that they have the proper tools and resources, and have received any training that they need. When they do the good work that you're expecting, make sure you verbally recognize it with some form of positive feedback. All of these together will promote a greater and increasingly greater sense in their head of, wow, I'm good at what I do. I am competent. Now, for autonomy, that sense that they have some control over how the work is done, look for opportunities to bring them into decisions that are made relative to the work. Delegate. Delegate well, where they're clear on what you expect, on the resources that they have available to them. Then turn your back. Let them make the calls. There's no better way to instill a sense of autonomy than actually giving them some real control. Finally, make sure that you have a solid relationship with them. As their leader, you are one person that they need to connect with at some level to get the job done. Now, as far as other relationships, consider investing in some team building to foster deeper ones. Invest in some form of personality profile like DISC or MBTI. When these are well facilitated, people learn about themselves and how they are similar and different to those with whom they work, and this can be a powerful kickstart to greater relatedness within the team. These are your big motivators: competence, autonomy, relatedness, with some simple actions, and many of which we already know to do. We just didn't know that, oh wow, that's why people get pumped up when I call out their good work. It really enhances their sense of competence. Now, this is why relationships matter. This is why I need to give them some say-so in the work that they do. All of this comes from a better understanding of self-determination theory, and I hope you find it as useful as I did. Thanks for watching today's video. I hope the concepts of competence, autonomy, and relatedness made as much sense to you as they do to me, and they influence your leadership practice or your coaching of other leaders. Please leave your comments in the area down below. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. There are also a number of other topics related to motivation here on my site. Did one around Vroom's expectancy theory a few months ago. Also look for the videos that talk about the 6 boxes. All of these get at what people need in order to do good work, what removes barriers from them, and how leaders work with them to bring out their motivation. I hope you get a lot out of it. I hope you get a lot of value out of it today. Until next time, be well.